My name is Tim Chatigny, and I am happy to say I'm partnering with Sam Adams to provide you guys with some amazing Mother's Day snacks. So your happy hour can be as well fed as possible. But just follow along, and I'll make sure you guys don't go hungry. But until then. All right, guys, so I am here to teach you guys how to make a Sam Adams infused beer bread. It's an extremely simple recipe, something you can follow along with very easily. If you have kids, it's another great way of incorporating them because it's just really fun and gets a little messy, but it's good. It's really fun. Few ingredients and just a little bit of time and love, and you're gonna have a great bread to eat during this quarantine. But let's just get to it, all right? All right, so first things first is we're gonna get our ingredients and tools ready. You're not gonna need to preheat the oven yet because we're gonna need to let everything rise. So what you are going to need is bread flour. You'll need 3 cups plus a little bit more just for the kneading process. If you don't have bread flour, you can absolutely use all-purpose flour. The dough itself might not be just to the standards of the recipe, but it still will work. I'm using whole wheat flour as well. We need a 1/2 cup of this. There is a great company called Mighty Mill located in Lynn, Mass. And they make some of the best whole wheat flour I've ever had. And it smells absolutely delicious. You're gonna need kosher salt. Definitely kosher salt, don't use iodized salt. Iodized salt is a different variation and much more potent than kosher salt. You're gonna need honey. I am using this incredible, might be a little biased, friend's father's honey from Sugar Maple Farms in Lebanon, Connecticut. They make this buckwheat honey that is like almost like molasses, and it's gonna go great with the flavor profiles of this beer bread. You're gonna need 1 ounce of butter, which is about 2 tablespoons. Yeast, active dry yeast is the best, but I have here a different variation. It's not instant yeast, so we will need to bloom it, but I will show you guys what that means, and it's very easy. You'll need 1 bottle of the 12-ounce Sam Adams Boston Lager. If you can't find this, which would be unheard of, you can use a different variation, winter ale or whatever seasonal beer they have. But the Boston Lager is the way to go. Cup measure, some measuring spoons. You're just gonna need, you'll need a teaspoon and a tablespoon, a knife, and wooden spoon, and a mixing bowl. But other than that, let's get to it, all right? So first thing first is we're gonna take our bowl and we're gonna start with our liquids. We're gonna start out with the beer. With the beer, we wanna make sure that it's room temp. So if you are able to pull one out the night before, that'll be great, because the warmer it is, the better off the yeast is gonna be able to activate, because if it's added into cold liquid, it'll go dormant until it starts to warm up, and then it'll start to do its thing, you know? So again, 1 12-ounce bottle of Sam Adams right into the bowl here. Next, we're gonna take our honey. This is buckwheat honey. You can use any sort of honey at all. If you're not a big fan of honey, you can use other liquid sweeteners like agave or molasses, anything that has like a nice sweetness to it. And we're gonna add in 2 tablespoons. One like that. And then 2, and I just mix it around just to get everything off the spoon. And don't be afraid to get your hands dirty. I'm always a big proponent on the fact that hands are the best tools in the kitchen. So we're gonna rinse that off. And the next step is we're going to add our butter. This is gonna, again, room temp butter. We're gonna just add that in. Don't worry, when we knead it, it'll fold into the entirety of the dough. So it doesn't need to be melted. Melted would be too hot. And then the next step is our yeast. If you are using active instant dry yeast, you won't need to add it into the liquid. What we'll do is we'll start with just this, and then we'll add in our flours, and then salt and yeast separated. Salt kills yeast, just so everyone knows. So if you mix salt and yeast together right away, it will die, and you're never gonna get like this beautiful rising loaf. But if you have yeast like I do, which is just dry active yeast, you need to bloom it before. So blooming just means adding into a liquid, a warm liquid, and letting it sit for like 5 minutes. And it'll start getting this bubbly look to it. So that is what we are gonna do with this. So I'm going to use 2 teaspoons. I usually eyeball most of my measurements, but for baking, just be safe, you know, use measurement. So 2 teaspoons of yeast. Mix it just like that. If you want to take a really cool look, you can see that it's starting to bubble up and fizz like that. I'm gonna make sure that all my yeast is mixed around. Just like that. All right, so I'm gonna take 5 minutes to let this just bloom and start to do its thing, and then we'll keep moving on. Welcome back. We are going to now add in our flour and into our liquid mixture here. Our yeast is doing its thing. It's blooming. It's fizzing. It's alive. It's moving. So the first thing is we're going to add in our flour before our salt. Again, salt kills yeast. We don't want that. So we're going to do 3 cups of bread flour. I'm going to go 1, 2, and 3. And we're going to do a 1/2 cup of our lovely whole wheat flour. If you really wanted to, you could substitute less bread flour for more whole wheat flour. It's going to give it this amazing nutty sort of flavor. And Mighty Mill here does a wonderful job. It's almost like smelling like toasted almonds. It's amazing. 1/2 cup of whole wheat flour. We'll set that aside. And then we will put our salt on the top. We're going for 1.5 teaspoons. Just like that. Now, what we will do is we're gonna knead it. So the first thing is we wanna mix it all together just so that it starts absorbing and everything is cohesive. Now when you're mixing dough, you start off just wanting to get everything into one big ball, and then what we're gonna do is we're gonna need a nice flat surface to knead the dough in. You could do it in your bowl, but I like having a spot where I can sprinkle flour on and just have a lot of space to work with. Now we're just going until all the flour is incorporated and there's no like loose bits. Wait, got some loose bits flying out. All right, so you're gonna get a mixture that's starting to look like a big bowl of slop, honestly. But that's what we're going for right now. It's gonna look a lot like this. It's still crumbly, it's shaggy, it's pretty gross looking. But we're gonna start kneading it, which is gonna start developing this beautiful substance called gluten. So if you want, you can grab some flour ready. What we're gonna do is we're gonna sprinkle some right on our work surface. You don't need a lot. Plop that down. You can save this bowl. Save the bowl. We're gonna place it back in there to let it proof. But for now, what we're gonna do is knead it. Kneading you can do it different ways, but all it is just folding and pressing. And what we're doing is we're developing this protein called gluten, which is found in all wheat products. Sprinkle a little flour on as we're doing this. And as you develop gluten, which takes liquid to develop, it gets stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger. So you don't want to knead this too long. We're going to knead it for probably 6 minutes. Like pasta dough, you can knead forever. But like muffins are a great example of something that doesn't need to be kneaded at all. You actually want to avoid the kneading, because the more you knead something, the stronger and the tougher the structure is going to be. And that's not what we want with muffins. But with bread, we want a little bit of structure, because if not, you're going to have like a dough, and that's just not good. You're going to see that it's starting to come together. It's looking more and more like a beautiful piece of dough. If it's sticking at all, you just sprinkle a little bit of flour. You don't want to add too much flour, because too much is, you're incorporating more gluten. It's going to become drier, denser. It's just not what we want. All right, so after about 6 to 7 minutes of kneading, you're going to have this piece of dough. It's looking like this. If you push it, it springs back. It means that you have this great development of gluten, that strong structure we're talking about. So the next step is we're going to take that same bowl and we're going to place our bread in there. And what we're going to do is we're going to cover it with a towel, like so, just like this. And we're going to let this rise and double in size. We're looking to get about double the amount. You're going to leave this in room temp outside. If your kitchen's really cold, then try to warm it up. My way of speeding up the process is you can turn your oven on to like 250 and just leave it sitting right on top of the oven, and that heat will make the yeast work faster. Yeast is like great at like room temp or 85, 90 degrees. It really works fast. So if you want to speed up the process, do that. But come back in about an hour and a half, and we can move on to the next step. All right. All right, guys. So after your about an hour and a half of proofing your dough, waiting for it to get to double size, you're going to get something that's looking like this. So double in size. It's pretty light, airy. It's very gassy. You can smell the yeast in there. So our next move is we want to be able to release the carbon dioxide that's built up in here. So we're going to do something called punching the dough. But before we do that, let's make sure that you turn your oven on to 400 degrees. And grab yourself a loaf pan. A 9x5 loaf pan works really well. I am a big proponent of cooking mine in a la cocotte. I don't know if I'm saying that right. But it's just a cast iron pot. I love baking my bread in this. It's really great. It heats up perfectly and evenly. So I'm going to be cooking in here. Cook time will not vary like at all. So for this is we're going to cook it out. It's going to be nice and airy. Great bubbles, which means that the yeast has been working. You can smell it, and you can smell the yeast. You can smell the beer in there. So what we're going to do is just sprinkle a little flour here and here, and we're just going to press down or punch with your fist just to release the air.
And then after that, if you have a loaf pan, what you're gonna wanna do is you wanna fold the bread in the shape of a loaf. Just like that. And then you'll be able to put it in your loaf pan and we'll let it proof again. Me, on the other hand, I'm gonna go circular. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna stick it right in here. If you wanna oil the pan beforehand, that works great. You don't need to though, especially cast iron. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna let this proof, which means that we're gonna let it rise again. It's a very important process. This will determine if your yeast is alive. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna let it sit for about another hour. In a warm spot, I'm gonna leave mine on top of the oven. It just heats up, it gets really easy. Make sure it's covered. We're gonna leave it just like this. And in 1 hour, I will show you guys what it's supposed to look like, and then we will bake. All right, guys, so after about an hour of proofing, we are going to bake it. Just wanted to give you guys a little look. It's doubled in size. When we bake, it's gonna curl up a little bit here. It's gonna rise a little bit and then push down and just get nice and golden brown around the edges. So, I'm gonna toss it in just like this. We're gonna bake for about 40 minutes at 400 degrees. But you should check it after 20-25 minutes just to see how it's progressing, and then give it another 10 minutes and then keep checking afterwards. But we're looking for a nice crusty edge. You'll be able to lift the loaf out, and if you tap it and you hear like a nice hollow sound, you know you're gonna be good to go. But let's throw this in. I'll see you guys in 40 minutes. All right, guys, so after about 35-40 minutes, you're gonna pull it out. I like to take the top off if I'm using this. If you are just using your good old-fashioned loaf pan, you're not even gonna have it covered anyways. So you can just bake it as is. I like to bake it, excuse me. And then take the top off and let it bake for a little bit longer, about 5 more minutes, so you get a nice crust on the top. But other than that, that is it. You let it cool down. Best thing to do is to take it out, put it on a nice wire rack, and let it cool down so it can crust on the outside. And then you enjoy. Slice it up, have it, it's great. Some butter and sea salt, it's fantastic. But I hope you guys enjoyed, and possibly teach you guys some other stuff later on. But until then, take care, right?